Do you think it's self-serving if I say I'm really excited about my talk today? Is that like patting myself on the back too much?
Not too much. I think it's a good thing. I'm excited about this talk too. It's like really the essence of why we do what we do. So
Absolutely. You know, the Healthspan10, like this has been really a decade or more of work to kind of put this into perspective. And one of the things we're going to talk about here is the reason it's taken me so long to put this all together is because the prevailing wisdom out there about living a long, healthy life is like completely wrong, you know, and the cost of this is so dramatic. But it took me that long to really understand that we can make this a lot more simple than it has been.
yeah, I agree. Like it's like you had to take all that time to sort through all the crap that's out there and find what really works for you personally and for your patients and then for your clients with Healthspan
Right.
MD, which is really cool and, just goes to show how dedicated you are to this and how much time and dedication you're willing to put into this, which I just think is awesome. And I live my life by it now. I mean, ever since I started working with you, I, was able to implement these things in my life because of the program you developed, and it's changed my life. It's made, health one of my primary focuses, and I know it will be for the rest of my life because I have a solid system to do so. So,
Yeah, that I'd like to, take credit for that, but I often say I don't think I chose it. It chose me, like
hmm
I didn't have a choice. Like this is just like what got my attention and it's what I think about all the time. Like I still remember when I interviewed for fellowship for cardiology and and I was telling the doctor that I was interviewing with he was saying, well, why do you want to do this? Like, go on to be a cardiologist. And I was telling him, I'm like, it's just in my mind. Like it's all the time I'm thinking about this. And he made the point. He's like, yeah, I often ask myself and I ask people around me, like, what do you think about in the shower? Like that's the
yeah,
thing you need to be doing. Like that's the thing. That's your passion. When you can't help it. You're just like
yeah,
that's what's on your mind. And this has been top of mind for a very long time for me.
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, today's the day. We're sharing
Yeah,
it
well,
with everybody. So,
let's talk about
yeah.
it. Well, and I'm going to start with a question for you and for our audience as well, just to think about this is, what do you think the number one most common question that I get from my patients is as a cardiologist? Like, what do you think the underlying question that I get from just about every patient that I see? And I actually realized this over time. Like I didn't recognize for a long time that the question that people were coming to me with was the same question over and over and over. They were just asking it in different ways. And so, what do you think that question would be? If you have a guess, you can give it. But if not, I'll kind of give you my thoughts about this.
I'm gonna guess, and this is probably cliche because you're a cardiologist, but I was gonna say, what's my risk for heart disease?
Yeah, so that's a way
Really?
of putting it. Yeah, like that's
Okay.
but the question really boils down to one thing, and it's how do I live a long, healthy life? Like,
Mhm.
they don't say it in those words. Nobody came into my office and said, well, I won't say nobody. I do have people that came into my office and said, look, I want to live a long time. How do I do this? But what they use is other phrases, like what you said, is what's my risk for heart disease? Like, really, what that question is how do I live a long, healthy life? They may say, you know what, I have chest pain, or I have heart palpitations, or I have shortness of breath. What do I do about that? The real question is, how do I live a long, healthy life? Or, if my blood pressure, cholesterol is high, what should I do? Or I have a strong family history of heart disease. All of those factors boil down to how do I live a long, healthy life? And that's top of mind for all of us, as we were just talking about. Like, what's most important to you? oftentimes it is that question: how do I live a long, healthy life? And today we're going to give everyone the framework on how to answer that specifically, and specifically, what do you need to focus on to live a long, healthy life? And like I said, this is the in question for many of us, because really, without your health, there most other things in life just don't mean as much. I mean, even the most fulfilling life, you could have all the money, the greatest relationships, all the purpose in the world, but if you don't have your health, none of those things matter. Or worse, if you have all that, but you're not here, you died too young, then all of those things don't matter. So, in a world where it seems like we don't agree on anything anymore, this is something that I think almost all of us agree, that we want to live a long, healthy life. But we also put caveats on that. We also want to put some barriers on this. We don't want to just live a long time in a nursing home, letting people taking care of us. We want to be strong, independent, healthy, energetic. And we want to be with the people we love, and we want to be doing the things that we love. But here's the big problem, and one that I have struggled with myself, and I know many of the people that come to us for help are struggling with, is how do you do it? So, Rylan, how many times have you had conversations with people that are looking to solve their health problems, and they weren't sure about how to do it, or they had ideas about how to do it, but they've tried those and they hadn't worked for them? Like, is that every conversation that you have?
Um, the vast majority. Like and I think it boils down to not like some people, it's like, I don't have the slightest clue where to even begin. And some people, I think it more boils down to they get started, like they have the general idea, and then it's uncertainty throughout the process. And how can you commit to something if you're uncertain of, like if this is even the right thing? Because the whole time in your mind, you're just doubting, 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 like, is this even going to work for me? Like, is this even really the right method? Like, there's research saying, like, if it's keto, there's research saying it's bad for you. There's too much saturated
Yeah,
fat, for example,
right.
and then there's some research and some evidence that people have done really well and lost a lot of weight with keto, and their blood pressure numbers have gone down. And for some people it works, and for some people it doesn't. So there's a lot of schools of thought out there that create false hope and uncertainty. So, you go in and you feel excited about it at the beginning, but it kind of fizzles out because it doesn't work exactly how you expected. And then I think it comes down to uncertainty of like, what really is the right thing for me? Because there's, like I said, I asked Dr. Hurst yesterday, like, if eggs are good for you to eat every day, because even as a health coach, I didn't really know, because I'm looking at all this different research and I'm like overwhelmed by it. And of course you read the best research out there, so you're my go-to for the things like that. But it's just an example of like, I even someone who's been in the industry for this long and is still overwhelmed with the information. So how to is one thing, the general idea, and then it's like when you get into the weeds of it and applying it to your life, it's that uncertainty that stops us, is what
That's
I would say.
that's that's so important, Rylan, and exactly right. And as you told that story, it reminded me of when I had this kind of epiphany. I mean, one thing that's an advantage of being a clinician, somebody who sees patients, is that you realize one size fits all is a concept that doesn't make any sense. Like, human biology is just too variable. You need to, as a physician,
Hmm.
tailor your treatment to that individual, and they're going to respond in the way, and then you adjust from there. Like, a life-saving medication in one person could cause life-threatening side effects in another. And that's kind of the art of medicine, and it's part of treating human beings. But it reminded me of a conversation I had when I was just starting this journey, trying to figure out nutrition and physical activity and things. Like, I'd been trained low fat, low cholesterol, because that's what
Hmm.
everybody talked about. Like, the American Heart Association said this is the way to do it. Well, it turned out that's wrong for most people. Like, not all people, but for
Yeah.
most people, that hasn't worked out at all. But what was really a poignant moment for me was I had two colleagues, two physician colleagues, friends of mine that I respected greatly. And one of them was telling me about his whole food plant-based diet. Like he was all in on this, like, all vegan, no oils, like he didn't even cook with olive oil or anything, and how amazing that had been for his health. And like 10 minutes later, I'm having another conversation with another colleague of mine who was telling me how on a paleo diet, which, from kind of first principles seems the exact opposite of a whole food plant-based diet because it was heavy in meat and fat and those things, and how he'd lost 35 pounds and his blood pressure was better and his cholesterol was better and all these things. And I'm like, how do I put this together? Like, these are completely disparate ways. Over time, I've realized it's every individual, needs their own plan. And that's what our program does, is empowers people to become their own expert at this. But, it's absolutely true. And I'm sure you had this experience when you were, before we started working together, just like I did. Like, what works? I mean, should you be eating low carb or low fat? How much protein should you have? Salts? How much alcohol? Exercise? Is it HIIT? Is it yoga? Is it CrossFit? Meditation? What of those 50,000 supplements out there should you be taking? More recently, a lot of talk around rapamycin and metformin as agents that can increase longevity. The numbers are overwhelming. And as I pointed out in this article that I wrote, I did a Google search on how to live a long time, and I got 7.5 billion results from that, which, again, ironically, equates to how many people there are in the world. And so, how do we work through all that information? And is all those choices good for us? And I guess I would make the point right there that if we want to decide if all those choices, all those options are good for us, we could just look at the results, right? Like, how is our health right now? Like, how are we doing in getting healthier with all of this information out there? And, when you look at our health, we are more unhealthy as a population now than at any time in world history. 60% of adults in the developed world have a chronic illness like high blood pressure, prediabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol. 60%, so more than half of us. 70% of us are overweight or at an unhealthy weight. Diseases like AFib, diabetes, fatty liver, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, dementia are skyrocketing, and life expectancy has decreased every year since 2014, despite all the amazing medical advances we have. And so I think that the question of, are all those choices making us healthier? I think in fact, those 7 billion choices that we have are part of why we are so unhealthy, because we can't find the right path, the easy, clear path to getting where we want. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, the proof is in what's happening right now. Like, there's such thing as called choice paralysis. So like when you're presented with so many options, it's harder for you to make a decision, substantially harder for you to make a decision. And with 7.5 billion different results of how to get healthier, how are you supposed to commit to one school of thought and follow what somebody else like has written, like this is the one and only way to eat, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's impossible. Like, and you said, when I was in college and shortly after, like I was I learned like traditional nutrition in college, like what are calories, what, blah blah blah. And so I was a calorie counter, and like that's what I thought the solution was. And for some people it is, for other people it's detrimental. So that's just an example of like my realization of, okay, this doesn't work for me. I need to find what balance of things works for me.
Isn't
But
that true? Like, I completely agree. And, at one time we need to talk about this, like why that calorie restriction as the way to weight loss is the biggest myth and the thing that is like killing us like that. if nothing else that we get through to people eventually, like that calorie restriction is a way to lose weight and get healthier, how that is just like sets you up to fail. That alone would be a dramatic thing. But let me ask you this: what would you think if we could take those 7.5 billion options and narrow them down to just 10? What would you think of that?
I think that would mean the world to a lot of people struggling with their health.
Yeah, so let's get to that then. Like, we've teased it enough. Okay, so the 10 things. So how did I come up with these 10 things? And this was really my task as a physician, is like, how do I take all of that information and boil it down to something that is actionable, that I can, a framework that I can use to improve my own health, but also improve the health of my patients as well. And I started with the knowledge about seven of these factors came from the science, from the research, science. And there's this concept that American Heart Association calls Life Simple Seven. And Life Simple Seven is the foundation for the 10 things. And I'll explain why I added and have, expanded on those 7 things. But Life Simple Seven, research studies have shown if people can optimize just 7 factors, they can decrease heart attacks by 80%. The people that optimize those 7 factors, half the stroke risk as people who don't, decrease dementia by 37%, decrease cancer by 33%. And one study, people who optimize those 7 simple factors had 15 more years of life than those people that did not. So if the question is, how do I live a long, healthy life? The foundation of any plan has to be those 7 things. And then I'll add the 3 others on that are also critically important, just not as easy to do in a research study, that are really valuable. So let's start with number 1 on those. And number 1 is the right nutrition for you. And I think this is the most important factor that is the most challenging for us, because as we were talking about earlier, we're all different. Few get this right. They focused on the calories in, calories out, or the latest diet craze. And the result is food becomes the enemy for them. But when you learn, and as we've shown in our clients and we've learned ourselves, Rielyn, the specific foods, how much to eat and when to eat that fits your chemistry, you realize how easy it is to love food again and to achieve your health and weight goals. And anything to add on nutrition there, Rielyn, as point number 1?
Yeah, like you said, it's just about finding what you love, but also what suits you, and there is, a sense of change, like a type of change that comes with that when it comes to getting healthier, but it's something you will always love. You will love it more than like the current state or anything, food wise that you're gonna have to give up. Like you said, well, first of all, we don't give up anything for good. But when you start down that path, you'll want to omit certain things from your diet that are holding you back, and it will feel good and your tastes change, and you learn to appreciate food and love food in a whole new, like, holistic way. And my relationship with food has grown so much because of this, and it's not something that is hard for me anymore. It's something I just absolutely love, and something that
Well,
adds so much value to my life.
I totally get it. In medical school, no kidding, this is not an exaggeration. Every Saturday morning, my reward was buying 12 Dunkin' Donuts and eating those over the weekend. Well, I sat and studied for 12, 14 hours a day. So you can imagine what my health was back then. But I haven't had a donut in 15 years, and it's not because I can't, it's because I don't want to. So but one thing I just say is that if your nutrition program is calories in, calories out, you're setting yourself up to fail. So number 2, let's move along. Physical activity. I'd say no other factor has as much power to impact the length and quality of your life than exercise. But for many people, they see exercise as a burden, like a mandatory way to burn calories, and it doesn't feel good. It's hard to stick with. But when you learn that this is physical activity can be the way to activate your metabolism, lower inflammation. One of my favorite mentors, would always tell me as a young cardiologist, it's the fountain of youth. And I will say that once you have established that habit, you won't ever want to live without it.
Agreed. I think, and another thing, that's so important with physical activity is it's what makes it stick. Like it can't be without nutrition, but it's what makes the, lasting health effects really stick and become a part of your life.
Absolutely. So number three, avoiding toxins. I mean, it doesn't mean just tobacco and excess alcohol. There are other toxins in life, highly processed foods, some prescription medications, even toxic life situations can be barriers that are holding back many people. Number four, blood pressure. It seems like everybody has high blood pressure, and so it can be minimized. Like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody seems to have it. But what many don't realize is that there are 1,100 deaths every day, preventable deaths every day from high blood pressure in the US alone. The latest data, about 46% of people have high blood pressure, adults have high blood pressure, and less than half of them have that under control. Here's another striking and stunning thing for a lot of people. At least half, and maybe 75% of blood pressure would be best treated by lifestyle changes rather than medications. That's not to minimize the importance of medications. Medications, when they're needed, absolutely should be taken. But if you can avoid medications by doing other things to improve your health, that just makes so much more sense to me. So, and to most people. Number
Absolutely.
five, blood sugar. 750% increase in diabetes in the last 50 years, and about 1 out of 4 people have pre-diabetes. So again, we know from research, but also clinical experience, the most effective way to avoid becoming diabetic is not medications, but nutrition, physical activity, fixing your metabolism. And the third one in the medical realm is the cholesterol levels. About 40% of people have unhealthy cholesterol levels. Medications are really important for high risk people, but most of those people could be treated with things outside of the medication realm. So I'll stop with those before we get to the last four, and just see if there's any comments from you, Rylan, or the audience that you want to questions you
Yeah,
want
does
to.
anyone have, if anybody has any questions, leave them in the comments. My favorite example with the blood pressure was my dad. After going on your program for, I think it was about 3 months, he started getting lightheaded, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is crazy." And I mean, he did not change his lifestyle that drastically. Like he cut out a couple foods that he felt he didn't need, and just started exercising a little more consistently. He already exercised, but he was just being more aware of what he was doing each day. And yeah, he had to get off his blood pressure medication. Like his blood pressure, because he was living a healthy lifestyle, his blood pressure medication became detrimental to him. And I thought that was just an interesting way to look at it, because um, you're actually, doing adding something extra to your body. You want to get back to that equilibrium, where medications aren't serving you anymore. You don't want to need them.
One of my favorite things is when my patients can stop their medications.
Yeah.
I love that. And again, not saying stop your medications that they're evil for you. That's not it at all. They're life saving in the right situations. But if you can minimize the
Right.
medications by making better choices, like who does it? Where does that not make sense? I mean, I guess maybe if you're a pharmaceutical company, then maybe it doesn't. But if you are, looking out for your health, then I think that makes sense to all of us. And then the last one, number 7, is unhealthy weight. And so that's Life Simple 7. I'll just say one thing about weight. It is not a calorie in, calorie out issue. It is a metabolism issue. The reason 90+% of people fail to lose weight is because they
Hmm.
keep trying these old, outdated ways to do it by restricting calories, by trying to burn more calories. Those can be aspects of fixing your metabolism, but if you don't take a more holistic approach to fixing your metabolism, then you are likely going to end up having temporary results. So those are the seven. When I talk about the 80% less heart disease, all those things, that's based on the Life Simple Seven. But as a cardiologist, as a clinician, as somebody who cares for patients, I also know that there are other aspects of health and living a long, healthy life that are really critically important. And so I've added those three to Life Simple Seven. And those are number 8 would be sleep, under recognized, critically important. But if getting restorative sleep is essential to not only avoiding the diseases that kill us, it's essential to burning fat. Like I will just say this directly. If you aren't getting restorative sleep and you want to lose weight, you feel like you have too much fat and you want to lose that fat, your metabolism will not allow you to do that until you get your sleep fixed. I mean, I just stated as simply as that. And it also leads to number 9, which is the same thing as stress. If you are under a lot of stress, you're not practicing an effective stress management strategy, then your metabolism will not allow you to burn fat and it will not allow you to get to your health and weight goals. So those two are that important. And I'll stop on that, Rylan. Any comments or questions about those?
I just have to say, I know from a personal experience, like if I don't get a good night's sleep, I know the next day my hunger cues, and the only reason I
Yep.
notice this is because I work in this industry and I'm very privy to, what, my normal hunger, the normal amount that I eat and versus, et cetera. But I notice immediately I'm hungry. I'm more hungry than usual. And I'm hungry at times when I don't normally eat. And I have less mental control over it. And it's
Absolutely.
like clockwork. Like it's science. It's how your body works. And your body's tired and is looking for ways to, and same with stress. If you're stressed, you're looking for ways to produce more dopamine. Food produces dopamine, so your body's natural response is, hey, I want food, I need that extra pick me up, I need that extra happiness right now. So if you're not getting the baseline of sleep and stress management, your body's going to try to compensate in other ways, like you said, and it's going to mess up your metabolism.
Yep, and there's really good research evidence about leptin and ghrelin, the hormonal cues that drive our eating. And anybody who says that, well, that's all under our conscious control, like somebody who overeats or they overeat and they blame, oh, well, that's just lack of self-control. That's you just didn't have the willpower, the motivation. They don't understand biology. Like we are at the mercy of our metabolism, at the mercy of those hormones, and there's no other way around that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you feel like it's easy for all of us, and I've found myself in this, is to blame myself, or even maybe even look at somebody else and say, well, they made that choice. They chose to be that way. They chose to make those decisions that led to them being massively overweight or whatever. Untrue, untrue. That's a blame that doesn't hold water. And the secret to this is when you get their metabolism in the right way, all of a sudden it's working for them, and all of a sudden those things become much more easy.
Yeah. And like we said, it's not your fault, if you are struggling, but you do have a choice to take charge of it whenever
Absolutely.
you are
Yep.
ready.
Absolutely. And then number 10, the last one is connection. And this is my favorite because it's the one that's probably the least easy to wrap your arms around. It'd be the least likely or least easy to research. But we know connection is critically important to your health. We know this from a social aspect. I mean, social disconnection, social isolation is on the rise, and particularly as we get older. Interestingly, social media has led to us being less socially connected. And we know those have an enormous impact on our health, but even more so on our quality of life. I like connection also because when you're connected to your purpose, to the things that make life great for you, that's when everything kind of comes together. So I really loved adding that 10th aspect of connection into our program. And so that's the Healthspan 10, the things that we are going to talk about all the time. Like, these are the things that we're going to drill down deep in our information, in our podcast, in our videos, in our content, because we know these work in helping people live long lives that they love. And so I guess I'll end on this, is that if you feel like you need expert guidance, a precision approach to getting your Healthspan 10 optimized, here's how we can help. Give us a call. And my dog won't be a part of the conversation.
Yes, your dog seems really excited.
This is just, I should probably just bring him in and let him be on camera, because that's probably what he really wants. But give us a call, schedule a strategy consultation. We're just going to get on the phone, talk personally about where you're at, where you want to go. And if it's a good fit for us to work with you, we'd love to have the opportunity to explain to you what we do, and we don't charge anything for this, absolutely free. So if that's of interest to you, if you're ready to answer that question, how do I live a long healthy life, schedule a strategy consultation. It's healthspanmd.com/talk, and Rielyn and I would love to talk to you. This information is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Don't make any decisions about your medical treatment without first talking to your doctor. Thanks for watching, and if you want to learn more about living a long, healthy life you love, click the link below to learn more about how we help people increase their health span. And if you like this video, hit the like button below, share it with your friends, and be sure to hit the bell and subscribe.